Women's rights is often broken up into rights for women of different communities in India. Women organizations have for long looked at the issue of empowerment on the macro level, such as reservation for women in the legislatures, but also encourage communities to look inwards, examine religious laws, and bring in necessary changes. Muslim women in India have paid the price for patriarchal discrimination for long, and every now and again assert their rights as equal citizens within the community and India. It has been a rocky journey, more so as reforms from within move only when a community is secure in itself. As inequality and discrimination leads to insecurity, and the first victims of insecurity and despair are the womenfolk. This is one of the reasons that while progress has been made within the minority community on the issue of rights, the progress has been slow and fitful. So welcome to Off Limits, everyone. Our guest this week is Zakia Suman, and she is the co-founder, as many of you already know, of the Bharatiya Muslim Mahila Andolan, which has been in the field quite a bit. It's been taking positions for the rights and for justice for Muslim women, and she's been very, very active, particularly in the recent past and before that. We don't see you that active as we did before, Zakia.
No, the thing is that, of course, it's true and not true. It's true because we are all up against a wall.
Yeah.
No amount of protesting, no amount of, saying that the constitution is being violated. It is all falling on deaf ears. So yeah, there is a kind of inertia it has built up in all of us. And of course, COVID added to things.
Before pushing you more there, I want to go back a little bit into the kind of work you guys have done. You've stood up for the rights of Muslim women, and you have been sort of struggling to find some levels of equality where the discrimination is countered, and you've tried to do it in the space of religion itself. So you have, I think, a bit of difference between you and other progressive women's organizations is that you try to argue for rights using the religion and using the Sharia and using the Islamic law, right?
Yes, very much, yes.
Yeah. And you found that made a lot of difference.
Yes, because see, ordinary women are believers. Be they Muslim, be they Hindu, be they of any faith background.
Yeah.
And what we refer to as a women's movement is by and large confined to the upper echelons of society. It is confined to some cities, or say women's studies departments, or women who are, educated, come from a certain class background. So the ordinary woman who lives in a gali mohalla, she is very much religious. She believes in Allah. She believes in the book. She believes in the Prophet. And at the same time, the injustice done to her, the patriarchy, which is all pervasive in our society. So those patriarchal violations are justified to her in the name of religion. So, like for instance, just a small example, till she was told that triple talaq is your fate, if you are a Muslim, since you are a Muslim, triple talaq is your fate, she was fine with it. But when she got educated that triple talaq is not sanctioned by the Quran, she decided to stand up and fight against it. So that's the difference, we have to, and to me, to us, secularism is also about respecting the religiosity of the ordinary person. Not everybody is, sitting in a kind of a university department and talking, from the high tower. So yeah. But at the same time, the Constitution of India also gives the right to religious freedom, Seema.
Yeah.
So she's as much entitled to be a Muslim as somebody else is entitled to be a Hindu or a Sikh or a Christian or a whatever faith background. So who are we to take away from her what has been granted to her by the Constitution of India? So any which way we look at it. And thirdly, and I think not less importantly, thirdly, the thekedars of religion, the custodians of religion, the self-appointed custodians of religion also are very comfortable if the progressives don't enter the realm of religion. yeah, so that their hegemony and their dominance remains. So, I mean, you cannot really fight patriarchy, be it Hindu society, be it Muslim society, be it any society, till we have entered the realm of religion. All over, not just in India, all over South Asia, because people are so religious. And the, cultural norms, the societal norms are all ostensibly emanating from religion. And we know that they are very, very unjust and unfair and discriminatory norms. So I think I cannot, I mean, anybody who believes that they are a feminist, or who believes that they are liberal humanist and are into activism, I think they have no option but to engage with religion on the side of justice and on the side of
yes.
The women and the marginalized.
Yes, and bring in religion in the form of fortunately all religious laws can be interpreted, right? Yes. And there is an interpretation. One is the regressive and backward thing to control the women and keep the control, as you just said, the patriarchal control on women, and the other is the real just kind of understanding of religion. Yes. Now, women in India, the Muslim women particularly, and of course all women, but let's talk about Muslim women because that's your area of work, have been very, this triple talaq has really worked against them, particularly in North Indian states, right? Yeah. So when you sort of moved it and you went to the court and you took it to the streets, what is the kind of resistance you encountered, and how successful do you feel that you were in getting this through?
So both the things happened simultaneously, the resistance as well as the support. And both of it, both these kind of reactions required a lot of perseverance and a lot of hard work and a lot of, we had to be at it all the time. So on the one hand, it was, how we read the Quran in our society. We just recite it. We don't understand it. So even I, at the end of some 15 years of activism on this issue, I know a little bit now. But to start with, even I did not know. So I'm saying, all of us who are sort of into activism, and we didn't know what it means, except that we had a general common sense that, that my religion is a religion about equality and about justice. So beyond that, we didn't know anything. So the more and more we got into sort of translation into various languages, and then disseminating what are the Quranic teachings, how Allah has created woman and man as equal, how in the Christian imagination where Eve was created from the rib of Adam, how that doesn't apply to the interpretation according to Amina Wadud of Islam. According to her, the very creation, Allah imagined a pair of human beings. So, and science tells us that that pair will be a man and a woman. So it took a lot of effort to bring out some of these, Quranic teachings to the women and to the interested men and boys also. And on the other hand, because we were treading into, uniquely new territory for women, because somehow in our in the Muslim society, not just in India but all over the world, the religious authority is by definition male, and by definition somebody with a beard and a skull cap, and and a lot of them also with patriarchal interpretation. So we were sort of entering that kind of a territory. So a lot of reaction from the clergy and some of the organized ones like the personal law boards and people like that, a lot of, and we were only women, merely women, a lot of character assassination, a lot of, going into our personal choices. My personal choice, I'm ashamed that I'm married to Soman, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I am a Zakia Nizami. So, okay, I happen to, marry Soman, but then that doesn't take away from me about who I am. No? Yeah. So that kind of resistance also came, but we also came across, religious men who were very supportive. So there may be, like minority voices here and there, not so organized, but they're in every city, in every state. We found Qazis, we found Maulvis who supported also. So but it was a continuous kind of reflection, iteration, going back and forth, and not giving up, and more women joining up, and that's how it sort of expanded.
Zakia, all of us have seen a fairly cynical exploitation of religion by the political class, right? It has happened in all religions. There's been exploitation at different levels, maybe at the level of a legislator, maybe at the level of governments. We saw the Shabano case, and we saw how that was exploited. into siding with the fundamentalists, right, at that time.
Yeah.
Did you feel that there was a certain sense of exploitation when you were doing this whole triple talaq thing, considering that there was an attempt to hijack it, right?
Yes. See, unfortunately, Seema, politics and political parties are a reality for all of us, and especially for those of us who are into social activism. So there were a lot of efforts to try and co-opt us and to try and sort of take away the, there were efforts like that. And like 9 out of 10 times we were mindful of the effort, but there always was that one time where, we also realized, by the time we realized, it was much late, very, very late. So those kind of things happened. But also, I have to say this, that the fact that the so-called secular political parties, never acknowledged that, there's a problem of violation of Muslim women's rights in family and in marriage. So that kind of a hypocrisy has continued. And here comes BJP, and they form the government, and they find an opportunity there. So not out of really gender justice, we all know everything that is happening all around us, the kind of patriarchy, the kind of statements which are being made by elected representatives, and even chief ministers of the BJP, about confining women wearing jeans, women using mobiles, women marrying people of their choice. So they are amongst the most patriarchal, of the forces around. But the fact that no other political party supported the, abolition of triple talaq, there was a window of opportunity for the BJP, and they tried to sort of, whole hog, they tried to grab it. But there were so many other, so many mechanisms, so many processes through which it kept on getting highlighted to the public that it's the women themselves who are leading the fight, is the women themselves who are demanding change. And indeed, it was the women who brought out in front of the whole world that Islam is a religion of gender justice if you interpret it correctly, with a human rights lens or with a gender rights lens. So actually, it was the women themselves who said it is our movement, it is our demand. Now, some political forces had to make attempts to appropriate it, so be it. But yeah, I really wish that the so-called secular parties had supported the movement, and then there would have been, it would have not have been so easy for the ruling party and their parivar members to sort of, try and take credit. But here it was like an open field for them. So
yeah, and as journalists, we've been covering all these movements for equal rights, whether it's in Christian law or Hindu law or Muslim law. Talking about Muslim law, if you span, say, a period of 3 decades, you find that the governments have, played footsie more with the fundamentalists in communities than they have with the progressives and those who are trying to bring in equality. And we've also seen that often when you move forward on an issue, say, like I remember standardized Nikah-nama, so that women's rights are protected at the time of signing that contract, some kind of communal disturbance takes place and everybody then retreats again. Now, this kind of a thing, which happens continuously when the community, the larger community, feels it's under threat, for whatever reason, at any particular point in time, reforms for the progress of the women in that community, in this case, while we are talking in the case of the Muslim community, go to the back seat. Yes. Why is that? Can't step in?
Yeah. See, I think there are many dimensions to what you were just saying, and there are many reasons for that. So one of it is that it is the largest minority, and it's also, like quite a sizable in terms of numbers. If we compare the Muslims, Indian Muslims, to the other minorities, say to the Christians or the Parsis, then it's a sizable chunk of the national population, almost like 15%. And alongside that, throughout, ever since independence, there has been a consistent pauperization and exclusion of the community. So the community has been reeling under poverty It has been, backward economically speaking, educationally speaking, totally deprived, and without a political voice. So it's not for nothing at the time of the study which was done by the Sachar committee, which was appointed by the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. This whole feeling that time was that the Dalits, the Muslims are going to be tomorrow's Dalits if no urgent measures are taken. So like it has been a combination of a total exclusion as citizens, coupled with this kind of politics of communalism, whereby you just needed to appease certain conservative forces in the name of secularism. You didn't have to engage, with the genuine welfare of the community. So that kind of politics continued. And of course, overall, if we see, the time for gender justice is never right. So even when when Nehru reformed the Hindu law, when the Hindu Code Bill was brought in the 50s, and the whole lot of 7, 8, 9 Hindu laws family laws were passed, there was resistance at that time also. But it speaks for the kind of statesmanship, the vision, and the kind of commitment of Nehruji and Ambedkar and people like that, that they could withstand that kind of a social pressure and get the parliament to pass these laws, with a majority. And today it's a reality that Hindu women are beneficiaries. I'm not saying that for Hindu women patriarchy is over. No, all Indian women do bear the brunt of patriarchy, but in the Muslim community, because it remained a minority, it was a minority, it was a backward minority, it was a poor minority, alongside this kind of a politics over secularism, where the need to sort of give importance to the condition of women, and the need to sort of make those kind of social and legal reforms, that need was never highlighted. And Seema, here I have to speak out against the hypocrisy of some of the prominent faces of the Muslim community. And a lot of them are the Delhi crowd, I like to call it as the Delhi elite crowd, who were on various committees and commissions, who have been on various committees and commissions for the last 2-3 decades. So none of them came out openly to support the abolition of triple talaq even, because they never wanted to, a lot of them are in the Congress party or are supporters of the Congress party. Quite a few of them are in the civil society, but very, well entrenched kind of, and very good connections with the Congress party at that time, when it was in power. So these people never, felt the need to sort of take up the issues of the women, because I feel a lot of these people are, coming from a very elite background, coming from landed gentry kind of families, and they don't have much interest or much understanding about what is it that an ordinary woman in a slum of Ahmedabad or Bombay undergoes. And I feel that even, as these people descend on all the places where communal riots take place, it's all, at the level of fact finding, and then, presenting it from high pedestals and things like that. But they've never got into, ground level work, and, sort of coming face to face with the, kind of harsh realities, the lived realities faced by ordinary people, and particularly the women on the ground. So I feel they never felt the need to take it up. In fact, a very prominent person, she never talked to us on our face, but she kept on saying, maligning our efforts, and kept on saying कि ये औरतों ने इस्लाम को कटघरे में खड़ा किया है. Now, I think you are maligning Islam, because when we talk about gender justice, if that amounts to कटघरे में खड़ा किया, that means you are somewhere yourself responsible for giving a bad name to Islam. There is no justice in Islam. That's what you're propounding by this kind of this kind of attitude and hypocrisy. So I think, Seema, all of it put together, it sort of never was felt necessary that there should be a codified Muslim family law, of course based on the Quran, based on the Quranic tenets of so much affirmative action which we have in the Islamic jurisprudence, like meher, like nikah nama, like so many, even custody and guardianship of children, share in property. There is so much, modern jurisprudence which is actually of Islamic origin.
Yeah, at times, what you're referring to was also perhaps you made one good point, is that there is no timing for gender justice. It is a continuous effort. But at the same time, when you were talking of the abolition of triple talaq, there were others in the far right talking of the same thing. at a time when the community, the larger community, was feeling under pressure, is feeling victimized, is feeling persecuted. So when that happens, then the timing does go wrong, doesn't it?
Yes,
and you
yes.
have to then talk of the safety and the justice and the rights of the entire community, and you're not able to then split it into the man and the woman.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Asima, we took this issue in right earnest in 2010-11. In fact, we held the first National Women's Tribunal of Triple Talaq victims way back in December 2012.
Yes.
And that time, a lot of women had come from different parts of the country, and they had sort of, given testimonies about their suffering. It was covered by the media and all. But no doubt, when the BJP government came to the center in 2014, it started, and the media also started paying attention to this issue, because it was like part of their universe, larger universe of uniform civil code in the backdrop and things like that. But yeah, I would say initially was 1 or 2 years it was possible, but today, for instance, after the CAA, openly discriminatory laws like CAA and so-called love jihad laws, I think today it's virtually next to impossible to take up, any of these
Really,
issues.
to put it very simply, is that patriarchy flourishes in unjust societies simply because it becomes very difficult for organizations like you and individuals like you to actually take up the issue of gender justice because of the reasons you've just outlined. And patriarchy then pulls the woman back into the hovel from which she's trying to get out.
Exactly.
Exactly. Environment of justice and a slightly more progressive environment where where the communities feel secure for the woman to be effectively able to challenge patriarchy, right?
Exactly. And I don't know when that day is going to come, but doesn't look like in the near future, because there's an all-round onslaught on the community. So
can we just get some kind of optimism in here and talk about a little bit? Would you say that from the Shah Bano time to now, say the triple talaq time, and the fact that when you got permission for the women to pray in the shrine in Bombay, there has been progress in the thinking of Muslim women? And if there were 2 women who came out at the time of Shah Bano's judgment, now there are many more women willing to come out and speak.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of progress, and the girls these days and the younger women, I mean, the kind of assertion that you see in them, not just in family matters, but all-round assertion. There is a greater awareness about their rights. There's a greater awareness about they being equal human beings, they being equal citizens, they being equal Muslims. So that's a very good development. And I'm also seeing a lot of change within the community also, within the families, because see, girls and women are, cannot be viewed in isolation. See, they are also part of the larger community, and they are somebody's daughter, they are somebody's sister, somebody's wife. So when a injustice is done to a girl, it's not just the girl who suffers, it's the whole community, whole family which suffers, and so it's the whole community. But I would say that the onslaught is also very, very real. The kind of polarization, the climate of hate, that's also very, very real. But the politicization of the minds, and the interest in getting an understanding about the Constitution of India, the constitutional principles, the interest in the the history of the freedom struggle, all the principles which the progressive movements sort of always are based on, justice, equality, fairness, non-discrimination. These are finding good kind of a repercussion within the community. And also because our stand has been, and I firmly believe, and I think all the women that I work with, I see they also firmly believe that there's a lot of commonality between the Quranic values of justice and equality and the values of the Constitution, which are again, at the foundation of the Constitution. The values are of justice, equality, fairness, including gender justice, including justice for minorities, thus justice for Dalits, justice for everybody. So it's like a great consciousness being sort of built although people are weary, people are even afraid of coming out in the open, and and for so many reasons, COVID being one of the reasons, it's not possible to organize people to come out and voice. But there is a kind of a silent recognition and a consciousness which is developing, and I really feel that and it's not just happening in the Muslim community, Seema, it's also happening in girls generally across all faith communities and across all backgrounds. So perhaps in the next 2 or 3 decades, it will be a very different India where the girls and the women will be very, very aware of their rights, and there'll be more and more men and more boys who will be supporting this kind of thinking and this kind of practice, for the girls and for the women. So despite of the very, very gloomy and I would say pathetic kind of politics which is going on, at the level of the people, I feel hopeful, at least, Seema.
Okay, great. So on that positive note, thanks so much, Zakia, and thank you for sharing your views with us.
Thanks, Seema. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Struggle for women's empowerment has been long and arduous. It has been so within communities, within countries, indeed across the world. Women have had a very, very rough time in trying to get equal rights, equal pays, equal justice, and have always been at the receiving end of the stick. Zakia Suman had been working on Muslim women and using the law, the Muslim law, to sort of penetrate the resistance within and to explain to them that there is a certain kind of equality that is available to Muslim women under the law, under the religious law. It's been a difficult time. It has not been easy. It is becoming more and more difficult. But then at the end of the day, as she said, and as we agree too, there is growing awareness, not just amongst Muslim women, but in women per se, an awareness of their rights, an assertion that is quiet but determined, and that will only increase with time, we hope. Thank you.